Have you ever noticed that moment? The one where your thumb hovers over your phone screen, poised to refresh yet again, even though you just checked your notifications 30 seconds ago. There's a peculiar ache there, a hollowness that somehow feels both empty and heavy. We call it connection, this digital tethering to hundreds, sometimes thousands of disembodied voices and carefully curated images. Yet in the quiet hours, when sleep eludes us and our screens glow like blue moons in darkened rooms, we must ask ourselves, why does this thing that promises to bring us closer to others so often leave us feeling more alone, more exposed, more raw than before? The answer lies not in the technology itself, but in the ancient, malleable architecture of our brains, neural pathways being silently rewired with each scroll, each like, each moment of validation or rejection that flickers across our screens. The human brain wasn't designed for the digital age. For hundreds of thousands of years, our neural circuitry evolved to process immediate threats, seek connection in small tribes, and find satisfaction in tangible accomplishments. Now we've created a world where these ancient systems are hijacked by algorithms designed to keep us engaged, scrolling, consuming. Each time you receive a notification, a like, a comment, a share, your brain releases dopamine, that seductive feel-good chemical linked to pleasure and reward. It's the same neurochemical released during sex, after exercise, or when eating delicious food. But social media has engineered a particularly potent delivery system, one that activates our reward center in unpredictable bursts, creating a reinforcing cycle that keeps us coming back for more. The true insidiousness lies in the intermittent nature of these rewards. Like a gambler at a slot machine, we never know when the next dopamine hit will come. Will this post get likes? Will someone respond to my comment? This unpredictability creates a powerful conditioning effect, training our brains to check constantly, to seek validation compulsively, to fear missing out on potential rewards. Over time, this constant stimulation begins to physically alter our neural pathways. Heavy social media use has been linked to reductions in gray matter volume in critical brain regions, including the anterior cingulate cortex and prefrontal cortex areas responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, and decision-making. The architecture of your mind is literally being reshaped by each scroll, each notification, each moment spent seeking digital validation. The brain's reward prediction error system, the neural mechanism that generates extra pleasure when rewards are unexpected, becomes particularly vulnerable. That unexpected like from someone you admire, that surprising surge in engagement on a post you thought would go unnoticed, these trigger heightened dopamine releases that further cement the addictive cycle. As these neural pathways strengthen, our ability to focus on tasks requiring sustained attention weakens. Our minds become conditioned to expect constant stimulation, constant novelty. The quiet moments that once allowed for deep thought, creativity, and self-reflection now feel unbearably empty, triggering an almost reflexive reach for the phone. The brain, overwhelmed by this constant digital stimulation, begins to adapt in troubling ways. Studies have shown that heavy social media users exhibit biological and psychological symptoms similar to those addicted to substances like alcohol or cigarettes. The compulsion to check becomes less about conscious choice and more about alleviating the discomfort of not checking. What begins as a simple habit transforms into something more profound, a fundamental rewiring of our relationship with pleasure, attention, and connection. We find ourselves trapped in a labyrinth of our own making, following neural pathways that lead us deeper into anxiety rather than toward genuine fulfillment. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "The most common lie is that which one lies to himself. Lying to others is relatively an exception." Nowhere is this more evident than in our relationship with social media. where we simultaneously curate idealized versions of ourselves while consuming others' highlight reels as if they were documentaries of unfiltered truth. The human mind has always engaged in social comparison. It's an evolutionary mechanism that helped our ancestors understand their place in tribal hierarchies. But social media has supercharged this natural tendency, creating an environment where we're constantly exposed to carefully selected moments from hundreds or thousands of lives, all presented through filters both literal and metaphorical. Each image we scroll past, each achievement we witness, each perfect family portrait or exotic vacation becomes fodder for our brain's comparison machinery. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for social cognition and self-evaluation, works overtime, constantly measuring our reality against these curated fragments. Laughter had once tumbled down these halls, warm and full, becomes more vivid and tangible than she remembered when it had been full of life. And so too do the imagined joys of others' lives seem more real than our own lived experiences. The psychological toll is profound. Research consistently shows that passive consumption of social media scrolling without actively engaging is associated with increased feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and depression. We become spectators to lives that seem more vibrant, more successful, more worthy than our own, forgetting that we're comparing our complete, messy reality to others' carefully edited highlights. This constant comparison activates brain regions involved in memory and face recognition differently than real-life social networks do. While meaningful face-to-face interactions stimulate areas associated with empathy and emotional bonding, scrolling through social feeds engages more superficial recognition processes. We process hundreds of faces and stories without the depth that comes from genuine connection. The fear of missing out, FOMO, emerges as a particularly potent form of social anxiety. Seeing others' experiences triggers activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, creating a stress response as if we were facing a physical threat. This biological reaction to digital content explains why scrolling can leave us feeling simultaneously drained and agitated. What makes this cycle particularly destructive is how it undermines our capacity for self-compassion. As we internalize these impossible standards, our inner dialogue becomes increasingly critical. The voice that whispers, "Not enough," grows louder with each scroll, each comparison, each perceived failure to measure up to the digital lives we witness. In the quiet darkness of night, when we're alone with our thoughts, the accumulated weight of these comparisons can feel crushing. We forget that behind each perfect image is a human being as complex, as flawed, as struggling as we are. We forget that the map is not the territory, that social media shows us only the shallowest representation of lives that, in their full reality, contain the same depths of pain and confusion as our own. Albert Camus wrote that, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." Yet, in our hyper-connected world, this existential dizziness has transformed into something more persistent, more pervasive, a background hum that follows us through our days and haunts our nights. Social media doesn't create anxiety from nothing. Rather, it amplifies our existing vulnerabilities, turning whispers of worry into shouts that drown out other thoughts. Studies consistently show that people who spend significant time on social media are more likely to experience symptoms of anxiety and depression, particularly teenagers and young adults whose brains are still developing. This isn't merely correlation. Research has begun to illuminate the causal mechanisms through which digital platforms reshape our neural responses to stress and uncertainty. Consider the moment before posting content online. Your finger hovers over the share button as your brain runs through countless scenarios. Will people like this? Will they judge me? Is this revealing too much or not enough? This anticipatory anxiety activates the amygdala, and triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol. Over time, repeated exposure to these stress cycles can lead to a heightened baseline of anxiety. Your brain becomes conditioned to expect judgment, to anticipate scrutiny. The structure of social media platforms themselves contributes to this anxiety amplification. Visible metrics like shares, comments, transform social interaction into a quantifiable competition. Each post becomes not just self-expression, but a measurable performance, one that your brain processes as a potential threat to your social standing, and by extension, your survival. The primitive parts of your brain can't distinguish between a lack of engagement on a post and actual social rejection. For those already predisposed to social anxiety, these platforms can be particularly damaging. Research shows that users with social anxiety disorder, SAD, engage with social media more frequently but more passively than others, preferring to scroll rather than post. This online silence is often accompanied by anxious rumination. The same complex cognitive and behavioral processes that make face-to-face interactions challenging are triggered by digital communication. Yet there's a paradoxical element to this relationship. Many turn to social media specifically as a coping mechanism for anxiety, attracted by the ability to control communication, maintain privacy, and reduce social context cues. The very tool that promises relief becomes, over time, a source of the very discomfort it was meant to alleviate. What begins as occasional worry can transform into persistent patterns of anxious thinking. Your brain, plastic and adaptive, begins to anticipate threats in increasingly mundane digital interactions. A delayed response to a message, a comment that could be interpreted multiple ways, a post that receives less engagement than expected, all become potential evidence that you're being judged, rejected, found wanting. But within this darkness lies the first glimmer of awareness, the recognition that this anxiety isn't entirely of your making. Your brain is responding logically to an environment designed to keep you engaged through emotional manipulation. The algorithms that determine what content you see are optimized not for your well-being, but for your continued attention. Understanding this can be the first step toward reclaiming your neural pathways from those who would reshape them for profit. Søren Kierkegaard once observed that attention is the most basic form of love. If this is true, then we must ask ourselves, in an age of constant distraction, what are we truly loving with our fractured attention? And what happens to our capacity for self-love when our attention is continuously pulled outward, away from our inner experience? The human attention span wasn't designed for the digital age. Our ancestors needed sustained focus to hunt, to craft tools, to solve complex social problems. Now, our brains are bombarded with notifications, updates, and endless scrolling possibilities that fragment our attention into smaller and smaller pieces. Research shows that heavy social media users struggle with shortened attention spans and decreased ability to filter out irrelevant information. This attention erosion has profound implications for anxiety. When we can't focus on the present moment, when our attention is constantly pulled toward our devices, we lose one of our most powerful tools for managing anxious thoughts. Mindfulness, the ability to attend fully to our present experience without judgment, becomes increasingly difficult in a mind trained for constant switching and novelty seeking. The prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and impulse control, becomes overwhelmed by the constant demands for attention from various apps and platforms. This cognitive overload leaves us less equipped to regulate our emotional responses, creating a vicious cycle where anxiety triggers social media use, which further diminishes our capacity to manage anxiety. Consider the quiet moments of your day, waiting in line, sitting on public transportation, even the brief pause before sleep. These once offered opportunities for reflection, for processing emotions, for simply being with ourselves. Now they've become automatic cues to reach for our phones, to seek stimulation, rather than sit with our thoughts. This habit deprives us of crucial opportunities to develop emotional resilience. The multitasking that social media encourages, switching between apps, conversations, and content streams, actually decreases overall cognitive performance rather than enhancing it. Our brains aren't truly multitasking, but rather switching rapidly between tasks, each switch carrying a cognitive cost that accumulates throughout the day, leaving us mentally exhausted, yet paradoxically unsatisfied. Yet within this fragmentation lies an opportunity for reclamation. The very awareness that your attention has been commodified, turned into a product to be sold to advertisers, can spark a revolutionary desire to take it back. Each moment you choose to focus fully on a single task, each time you resist the urge to check notifications, you're rebuilding neural pathways that support sustained attention. This reclamation isn't about perfection, but practice. It's about creating small islands of focused attention in a sea of distraction. A meal eaten without scrolling. A conversation had without glancing at your phone. A morning spent in reflection before opening any apps. These seemingly small acts of attention rebellion gradually strengthen the neural circuits that support presence, focus, and ultimately, peace of mind. As Viktor Frankl reminded us, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. Social media seeks to eliminate that space to create an immediate reflexive loop between stimulus and response. By deliberately widening that gap, by noticing the urge to check your phone without immediately acting on it, you begin to reclaim your freedom to choose where your precious attention goes. Carl Jung wrote that, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Perhaps nowhere is this more relevant than in our relationship with social media, where unconscious habits and neural pathways can dictate our behavior without our awareness. Yet the same neuroplasticity that allowed these pathways to form also offers us the possibility of conscious rewiring. The brain is not static, but constantly changing in response to experience. Each time you check social media, you strengthen certain neural connections. But equally, each time you choose a different response to the urge to check, you begin forming new pathways. This is not about willpower alone, but about understanding and working with your brain's natural tendencies. Mindfulness. The practice of bringing non-judgmental awareness to your present experience offers a powerful tool for this rewiring process. By observing your impulses without immediately acting on them, you create space between stimulus and response. You might notice, for instance, the physical sensations that accompany the urge to check your phone. Perhaps a slight tension in your chest, a restlessness in your hands, a shift in your breathing. This awareness allows you to recognize patterns. Perhaps you reach for social media when feeling bored, anxious, or lonely. Rather than judging these patterns, you can acknowledge them with compassion. The goal isn't to never feel these emotions, but to develop a wider range of responses to them. Responses that nourish rather than deplete you. Practical steps can support this neural rewiring. Creating physical distance from your devices, charging your phone outside your bedroom, designating certain spaces or times as phone-free helps interrupt automatic habits. Adjusting notification settings reduces the external triggers that pull your attention away from the present moment. These environmental changes make it easier for new neural pathways to form. The concept of digital minimalism, being intentional about which technologies you use and why, offers another approach to rewiring. Rather than reflexively adopting every new platform or feature, you might ask, does this technology support my values and goals? Does it enhance my life in meaningful ways? This selective approach helps reclaim agency in your relationship with social media. Perhaps most importantly, cultivating rich offline experiences creates positive alternatives to digital stimulation. The brain that regularly experiences deep conversation, physical movement, creative expression, and connection with nature has less need for the dopamine hits of social media. These experiences activate reward pathways in healthier, more sustainable ways. This rewiring isn't about demonizing technology, but about reclaiming your relationship with it. Social media platforms are tools, powerful ones, designed with sophisticated understanding of human psychology, but tools nonetheless. The question becomes not whether to use them, but how to use them in ways that support, rather than undermine your well-being. As you become more conscious of your patterns, you may notice subtle shifts. Perhaps a decreased urgency to check notifications. Perhaps more awareness of how certain content affects your mood. Perhaps a greater capacity to be present with discomfort without immediately seeking digital distraction. These small changes reflect new neural pathways forming, new possibilities emerging. The journey of mindful rewiring isn't linear or perfect. There will be days of greater awareness and days when old patterns reassert themselves. What matters is the overall direction, the gradual shift from unconscious reactivity toward conscious choice, from digital dependency toward digital autonomy. In the soft glow of screens that illuminate our faces night after night, we've become both more connected and more alone than at any point in human history. We've created technologies that reflect back to us both the best and worst of our nature, our desire for connection, alongside our fear of truly being seen, our creativity alongside our compulsion, our compassion alongside our judgment. The neural pathways that form in response to these technologies are neither inherently good nor bad, they simply are, shaped by the choices we make moment by moment, day by day. Perhaps the most profound truth is this: the same brain that can become anxious, addicted, and fragmented through unconscious use of social media can also heal, integrate, and flourish through conscious awareness. The darkness you may feel scrolling late at night isn't a fixed state, but a signal. Your mind's way of telling you something important about what it needs. Listen to that signal, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What is it trying to tell you about your hunger for connection, for meaning, for rest? As you navigate this digital landscape, remember that you are more than your likes and followers, more than your posts and shares. You are a living, breathing miracle of consciousness, capable of depths that no algorithm can fully capture or understand. In a world that increasingly asks you to reduce yourself to data points, perhaps the most revolutionary act is to reclaim your wholeness, to remember that you exist beyond the screen, vast and complex and gloriously, imperfectly human. As the blue light fades and you set down your phone, remember this. In a world that profits from your self-doubt, self-acceptance becomes an act of quiet rebellion. Your worth was never measured in likes or followers. It was written in the stars long before the first notification ever pinged. The anxiety you feel isn't weakness. It's your soul's whisper reminding you that you were made for deeper connections than algorithms can provide. In the space between scrolls, in that moment of hesitation before reaching for your phone, there lies an ancient silence, waiting to teach you something that no feed can ever show. You are already enough, already whole, already worthy of the love you've been searching for through every refresh. Perhaps true freedom isn't found in perfect digital detachment, but in knowing that the most beautiful parts of you exist beyond the reach of any screen, untouchable, unquantifiable, and eternally, magnificently real. If something in this journey resonated with your own experience, I'd be deeply grateful if you'd share your thoughts in the comments below. How has social media shaped your own relationship with anxiety? What small step might you take today toward digital mindfulness? And if you found value in these reflections, consider subscribing to join our community of fellow travelers seeking deeper connection in this digital age. New explorations of the human condition arrive every week. Thank you for giving me the gift of your attention in a world designed to fragment it. Your presence here means more than you know.